from everyone to do the recording?
Yes, every day we record, and I'll record this separately so that it will be easier for you as well. So we have recorded the previous session also, and this is particularly for you and all of us.
Very good.
Okay, so first I want to introduce Jackie to you all. Before that, I want to show you. Then that will be easier for all of us to catch me. Uh, can you see, class? Please tell me. Can you see the slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I want to introduce Jackie. This is very short. I asked her brief CV so that I can introduce her formally. So this is PhD in 2002 from University of Bath and MA from Nigerian University. There are so many things here. Uh, she has worked in different institutions as in different posts like English and special education teacher in Branty Country Board of Education Secondary Schools, coordinator of special education, principal elementary school, superintendent of education, seasonal instructor, adjunct professor, and present international consultant. Other activities: President Ontario Educational Research Council 1988 to 89, Governor Ontario Research Federation, Chair Board of Governors, Brantford General Hospital, OERC Award for Leadership in Action Research, NOM Center Award for Outstanding Service to Teachers, Professional Development Award for Provincial PD Activities. Recent PhD examiner 2016 to 20 at the University of KwaZulu, if I'm not mistaken, National and National Mandela, South Africa. Then there are so many publications. He has just given few of them here for your reference. If you want to go through them, I will be sharing with you, or you may find in from other sources as well. So this is the introduction, and this is very great pleasure. I don't have words. And more than this CV, I have shared my heart to her, and she is more than mentor to me. And let's hear from her today.
Well, it's lovely to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'd like this to make this informal, if that's possible with you, and maybe we could start with some questions that you would like me to talk about, or how can I help you? I know that your professor has asked me to talk a little bit about epistemology, ontology, and axiology, which I'm happy to do, but I would really like to hear what you'd like me to talk about.
Hello, Jackie. Hi, how are you?
Fine. Nice to hear from you, Pushpa.
Thank you. So let me on my video also so that you can at least see.
Yeah, that would be great.
All right. So it's a great pleasure to have you in our class.
Thank you.
I saw, your research works and your experience, and I'm really inspired. Since I'm also working on my research paper, so I would love to get some from you. I saw that you have published some, articles in action research. So I have actually, recently I got to know about action research. Previously, when I did my master's, I did it in, that was a narrative inquiry. So now I opted for action research because I thought that this would be more applicable to my practice. I'm a school principal in a preschool. It's a preschool.
Are you?
Yeah. So I'm really, excited to know about action research, how we can apply this in the context of preschool. And due to pandemic situation, I couldn't, I thought that it was not possible to conduct research in a small school because of the pandemic. If I were in the school practically, if my children were there physically, I could have done a lot. But now due to pandemic, there are so many limitations. And I'm still, in a state of confusion whether my action research would really work on this situation in my preschool, or do I have to do something else? So what do you say? Is it possible?
Okay, definitely. I'll get back to you. Any other questions?
So one more thing, let me add on. So I've just I have just proposed my title like enhancement of IT, because due to pandemic we are more used to IT. We are learning, we are actually running a virtual class, and though earlier we used to do lots of hands-on activities in the school, but now somewhat due to limitations of materials at home, we are not able to do that. So we have tried to enhance our IT tools so that we can make learning more fun for small ones. I don't know how more it will be, whether it will be really fruitful, but I'm trying my best. So what do you say about that also, please? IT for small ones.
Definitely. And I have worked with preschool children and
Oh, wow,
preschool
that's great.
instructors, so I can give you some examples actually.
All right,
Good.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
So that's all for me.
Anyone else? No other questions?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
Namaste, good evening. This is me, Kailash Kumar Malla. Actually, I'm principal of secondary school
Okay.
and leader of institutional school. My query is there any difference to apply the research action methodology in underdeveloped country and developed country? This is my query. Same process, or is there any any differences to apply whether developing country or underdeveloping country?
Okay. Good question. Thank you. It's Kailash.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ms. Jackie.
It's actually morning, Rajendra.
Yeah,
It's
it's good
morning.
morning. Here evening. Uh, it's our great opportunity to talk to you. Actually, I'm involving in autoethnography.
Yes.
But while studying this literature and other thing, sometimes what I feel, reflecting oneself and one practices. And when I see the research from that quantitative data, and when I listen other people's, like taking that quantitative research as the authentic research, and the so many people reflect like writing stories, like writing poems and reflecting oneself, how it can be a research, and is it valid? How can you validate this while writing your own stories and while reflecting your own practices, whatever you are doing? So what are the practices actually? How can we make it valid? So these days we are studying, and this is our research class as well. So it would be better, if your practices and your country's practices, if we know about this and validity of this research. Thank you very much. Not more than this.
That's a
From my
great
side.
question. Thank you so much. I'll definitely deal with that. Are there any others?
Namaste, madam.
Namaste.
My name is Sambhu Bikram Bista. I'm a secondary school teacher, and my question is about action research. In this pandemic situation, COVID-19,
Mhm.
how can we conduct action research to make the action research in effective way? Could you please provide some ideas, because my research participants are my students, but there is no physical class. So what are the ways that help to collect information from my uh, students? They will take part in my research. Okay, thank you.
Yes, and you know what? These are relatively new questions to all of us. except that the form of action research that I teach and support fits perfectly into the current pandemic situation. So I'll definitely do with that. Any others?
Namaste.
Namaste.
I'm Bhima from Nepal, eastern part of Nepal. Uh, I'm involved in action research, and my topic is the curriculum. It's curriculum itself is complex, complex topic, and then I'm going to analyze curriculum between grade 1 and early childhood development center. What is the difference between what? Then I will be finding the gaps. What are the gaps between ECD curriculum and grade 1 curriculum? Then my query is, how can I apply through action research?
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
very good. Okay, so shall I deal with these, and then if some others come up along the way, we can go with them?
Okay, good morning, Jackie. So I just want to ask one more question.
Okay.
So since we're having a research methodology class, I am very new to the education field. So I'm from the management background, and the education background is very new to me. And I've been trying to implement all the research methodologies in my research. I mean, what do you call this research topic? But what would you suggest for me, like a newcomer? What will be the appropriate research methodology for doing in the education field? What would you suggest? And is there any possibilities that we can do the quantitative research in education field as well? So would you suggest few of them so that I can plan for my research topic as well? Thank you.
Okay, just let me check what your question was. So your question is, because you're not from an education background, then in your context, how can you do this research, this kind of qualitative research? Can you correct me where I'm wrong?
Yeah, yes, that's the correct one. And is there any simplest form? Yeah, I've heard many use topic like autoethnography as their research. What do you call it? Just practical. I don't know, research based. I just forgot those narrative research methodology is also there, and action based research is also there. So, what would you suggest for the newcomers like me?
Okay, all right. Very good. For the rest of you that haven't given me a question, let me be very clear that you will have my email, and we can certainly correspond at any point where I could be useful to you. I'm not working currently, and I'm not associated with a particular institution, and I'm not in any way a supervisor. I am just a mentor. So, and for me, this is my way of giving back. Many people have helped me along the way to create my PhD and MA and BA and so on. So I'm just giving back. That's all I'm doing. And so your professor and I met at a conference in Croatia, if you can imagine. And since then we've been great friends. So let me begin. I want to deal with kind of 2 or 3 of these questions at once, but I want to start with what your professor asked me to talk about so that I don't get in trouble with her, okay? So the question that she asked me, and I did make a few notes just so that I didn't forget, and her question was, can you talk about epistemology, ontology, and axiology? So I'm going to make this fairly simple although they are very complex areas of philosophy. There's a long history in philosophy, Western philosophy primarily, beginning with the ancient Greeks coming into the present day. And nearly every great philosopher has contributed to this field. Epistemology, in its basic form, is a theory of knowledge. A theory of knowledge. And in the ancient times, it was considered to be controlled by the philosophers. In this day and age, we are all in some way or form philosophizing. Every minute of our day, we're thinking about who am I and how am I in this world, which is essentially the area of philosophy. So there are kind of three essential questions around epistemology. What is knowledge? Is there a difference between knowledge and opinion? Can we have knowledge? Are humans really capable of knowing things? And how do we get knowledge? What is the process? And I mean, you're engaged in that every day in terms of the different experiences you have. And as you spend time in your class and think out loud and reflect, we're all creating knowledge. Ontology is the theory of being. So epistemology is a theory of knowledge. Ontology is a theory of being. And so, for example, when I talk about my ontology, my way of being, is I'm very dialogic. This is part of my way of thinking. So when I do research, dialogue is very much a part of my research. And I mean, some people don't find comfort in that. That's how I kind of think out loud. So dialogue as research is part of my ontology. Axiology is the theory of value. Theory of value. So of the kinds of things that are valuable. It's also, when we do research, it's value applied to our research and discussions. So to review, ontology is the term meaning theory of value, just as epistemology is a theory of knowledge, and ontology is a theory of being. What we do in clarifying the meaning of our values in the course of their emergence through practice can be understood as an axiology of our theory of value. So, are you following me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, we could get into a lot more depth on this subject, but that's kind of, if you keep those three things straight in your head, I think you'll be able to deal with any reading that you come across. Okay, so have I done my job? Professor, have I done my job?
Yes, great.
Okay.
I'm
All
enjoying.
right, so let's go back to the questions. Ms. Dangana, you need to tell me what kind of time we've got today.
We don't have fixed the time. You can how much you can invest. That would be.
Oh well, it's the beginning of my day. Be careful what you wish for.
How much you feel comfortable. We have enough time. At least about 30 minutes. We have more, but you may decide on that.
Well, I won't keep you later. I'll be in big trouble, I'm sure.
Okay.
All right. So 2 or 3 of these questions revolve around action research and narrative research, and how do I do it when I'm dealing with distance learning and I'm not with people in order to collect the data. That's kind of 2 or 3 of the questions. So I'm going to start with a particular form of action research that I think solves all the issues that you're talking about. And that is the living education theory methodology that uses action research, that uses narrative, that uses phenomenology, that uses self-study. And the language we use is that methodology is an individual methodology. While it has certain characteristics, it's up to each person to create his or her own methodology, because there's no single methodology that works for everyone, because we are all so very different. Our contexts are different, our experiences are different. And the second I'd like to say is that this methodology starts with you. Are we having a transmission issue right now? Yeah. So every one of these living educational theories starts with I. And the basic question is, how can I improve my practice? So, Shearing, is that how you say your name, Shearing? That your question about you coming from management and trying to understand this action research and narrative research. With this kind of question, how can I improve my practice? It doesn't matter what your practice is, right? So if in my work, I did my research when I was superintendent of schools, which is kind of like a supervisory position in a school district. And so my question was, how can I improve my practice as a superintendent of schools? So it doesn't matter. And in my courses, I've had nurses and business people and police workers and social workers, and the question's always the same. How do I improve my practice? How do I improve what I'm doing here? And within that, the focus is on your values. So the first thing that I do with people that I'm working with is ask them to share their values by writing a story. Write a story about what really matters to you. And within that story will be your values. So my students, many of my students, spend the time trying to uncover what those values are. And you think it sounds like an easy job, but in fact, it's quite challenging. And what you first start with as a set of values very often changes. Sometimes we get a list of about 25 and we think, okay, that's a lot to live up to. And we're able gradually to compress it to 2 or 3 values. My values are loving into learning. When I work with my students, I love them into learning. Now, that wasn't a value that I knew to start with. My students told me, that's how you are. Another of my values is building a culture of inquiry. Inquiry, reflection, and scholarship. So when I work with people, I try to create that safe, comfortable environment where you can be vulnerable as you talk about what matters to you. And within that environment, then you can find a way to find your values and to see if you're living according to those values. Now, how would we find out if we were living according to our values? So I say that I love my students into learning. So I'm making a claim there, right? I'm claiming that I am that person who loves her students into learning. Is that enough data to support a claim to know? No. But it is an important voice. So somebody asked about validation. So the only way I can validate my claim to be living and working and teaching in a way that is loving my students into learning is from the other voices, particularly the students, right? So that means that I need to hear their voices in my research in order to support that claim that that's how one of my values that I live. Now, let's take a day and I'm teaching and I'm busy and I'm trying to get a lot done. And I say, well, no, that's not right. And the student goes, and I say, well, I'm loving you into learning. And the student said, no, that's not loving me into learning. So in that situation, I am what Jack Whitehead calls a living contradiction. I think I'm being kind and loving. I'm not. So I need the student to feed back to me, on this day, at this time, that's not how you're making me feel. Now, the other sources can be colleagues, can be family, can be the literature. So for example, I go into the literature on love, and we have there, you'd be surprised how much information there is out there, and your own professor can tell you that she's done research on this and published a paper. So whether you take any of the work from Nell Noddings or from Buber or from Prairie or from Bell Hooks, there's all kinds of literature out there on love. So that's another voice. So we're now talking about a triangulation of the data. My voice, and in that case, I can also do a video recording as we are with this class. And within the video recording, you could see whether students are responding to me in a way that shows I'm loving them into learning. So we have lots of data out there to draw on where we don't actually have to be in the classroom or in the business or in the hospital to find data. I want to talk a little bit about the living theory methodology. So by definition, to create your own living educational theory, which is unique because it's only you who has this knowledge, this experience, who in this context, I mean, there are no two people like you. There are no two people with your experience. So when you write about your narrative, about your action reflection cycles, it is unique. And within that living educational theory, share publicly an experience, an explanation of your educational influences in your own learning and in the learning of others. And of course, the basic question then is, how do I improve what I'm doing? So it is in fact a form of self-study. It is a narrative, but it is very unique in its methodology because you draw insights from various different forms of methods and methodologies. The basic action reflection cycle seems to be endemic to every living educational theory because it is doing, acting, reflecting on how it went, assessing how I did, trying something else, repeat. So act, reflect, revise. That's the action research cycle. So let me go back and check my questions to see how much I've covered. Pushpa asked me about inquiry and applying to a preschool. So, I mean, it doesn't matter the age of the students. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about groups your age or whether we're talking about preschool children. The same process applies. What are your values? Are you living according to those values? How do you know? Kalesh asked about, is there a difference between underdeveloped countries using action research? For me, it's exactly the same. It's a matter of when the focus is on you, as opposed to studying somebody else, then it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. The question is, how can I improve my practice? Am I living my values fully in my practice? How do I?
Sorry, Jackie, please hold on. म्याम एकचोटि सबैको म्युट गरिदिनु पर्ला ब्याकग्राउन्ड डिस्टर्बेन्स आएको छ सन्तोष सरको प्लिज म्युट गर्नु हामीलाई डिस्टर्ब भइरहेछ सुन्नमा पनि के भाडा बजे जस्तो आवाज पनि आइरहेछ है त There's some disturbance in the background noise, so I would like to request everyone to please be muted so that we can listen carefully. Thank you.
So I'm going to take a pause, Ms. Dungan, and ask if I am covering what people need to know. Because we've been almost a half hour and I'm trying to check. Yes, no, maybe? Okay. So I'm going to keep going with the questions. Rajendra asked me, I'm sorry if I don't pronounce the names. I'm very sorry. He asked me about autoethnography, which is very much like the theory, very much. In many ways, it is autoethnography. There's a slight difference, but it's basically autoethnography. And then the question was about how are reflections, narratives, poems, valid data for proving your living educational theory. In fact, we encourage and highly support alternative ways of representing data. That communication is very often in very different ways for different people. And if you look at the master's degrees that are on my website or on Jack Whitehead's website, you will see that we encourage people to communicate in a way that is important to them. And for some, that's poetry. For some, that's visual arts, paintings. For some, it's drama. All of those can definitely be data to provide evidence to support your claims to know. In particular, recordings. So for all of you that are doing the distance learning, using IT forms, it's a perfect opportunity to record your teaching. Now there are issues here with children because you can't tape children without permission. And in many cases, universities frown on it generally. However, you can tape yourself. And in that, you can record it, analyze it, and get other people to analyze whether or not your teaching is effective, if your teaching is values-based, if your teaching is following the curriculum. There are any number of ways you can self-assess with the recording. And you can get colleagues to assess as well because you can share the recording. It's actually a very effective strategy because if you sit with a colleague and review your recording, it's like having another set of eyes with you. You know, here's somebody that wasn't there, can actually look at it and say, well, you did a really good job of this, but that was not clear at all. Rosenda, am I answering your question? Now I want to go one step further, validation. The validation process that we support in living educational theory is putting together a group of about 5 to 8 people who are critical friends, in essence, who will sit and look at what you've written and give you critical feedback on that. So you would write a paper, you would share it with your critical friends, you would meet on Zoom or Google Meet or whatever you use, and they would give you specific feedback on your claims to know. And when you write your next version of your research, I would encourage you to use their questions in the research and then answer them, because that will definitely strengthen your paper. Did I answer your question, Rosenda?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Good. Next question. How do we collect info from students when we're doing online classes? It certainly, the recording of students is frowned on, but if you are teaching a class and a student gives you feedback in terms of how you taught the class or what they learned from the class, or you simply write down on a piece of paper what the whole picture of that class is, the narrative of that class, you can certainly, without identifying them, write down what you learned from the students. Are you following me? So in this case, I'm trying to convey to you, the kinds of issues there are in action research and living educational theory. So the questions you asked me that I've tried to answer is data for me. Without putting your name on it, I could say one student asked me about how to conduct effective action research when there's no physical class, and how do you collect info from students? And this was Shavu. So I can include that when I write my narrative of talking with you at Kathmandu. And then I could share that with one of my validators and say, is that clear? Does that make sense? Have I supported my claims to know? The question on Beamer's question on curriculum. I would say that as far as an action research is, certainly you can do the action reflection cycles. I would probably work with you, Beamer, and say, how can you make that into an I question? And that would take a little bit more discussion than what we've had so far. I mean, all of what I've talked about today is studying your practice. So how are you improving your practice in analyzing the curriculum to make it better for the students? In what ways will this help students learn better? And I mean, there ought to be a correlation. When I'm saying, how can I teach these students better? Then I need to be collecting the data to say, how will this curriculum then help students learn better? And how will I know? So, I mean, assessment is a big part of analyzing curriculum. So I would stress both what's in the curriculum, is the curriculum actually being taught? And how do I know? And then is the assessment giving the teacher enough information to know whether or not she's being effective or he's being effective in the classroom? And then what have I learned in this process, in the action reflection cycles, about improving curriculum for students? Does that work?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, yes.
I mean, we'd love to talk to you further on this, but I think it's a pretty exciting study you're doing. And I think it could have huge benefits for you and for the students. And the last question was about the management. And I think I did deal with that partly at the beginning. As I say, with living theory, it doesn't matter what role you're in. The question is always the same. How can I do this job better? How can I be a better manager, social worker, teacher, principal? Okay. What can I do for you now?
Great. It's a great time. I want to ask our students, do you have any query left to ask Wither? Otherwise, I want to conclude our discussion. Do we have any query?
I have one of the short queries about my research. Namaste and good morning, Jackie.
Namaste.
It's me, Chandrasekhar Sapkota.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you. And I have planned to research on the topics of online teaching strategy and its impact on students' mathematics learning attitude in school. And I'm planning to do the interpretive inquiry. But I know that interpretive inquiry itself is not a method. I have to choose the methodologies for this research. So I'm in a dilemma whether I should choose ethnography to get some information and collect the information from the students and in my class or in the different schools students. Whether I should choose the autoethnography and auto/ethnography. So I'm in dilemma to choose the methodology. Can you help me in this matter?
So, as I said, autoethnography is very close to living educational theory. That I mean, I'll just go over the difference for a second, just so you understand. A living theory, education theory, is similar to ethnographic research in paying attention to the educational influences of the cultural norms within which the researcher is acting and researching. It differs from ethnographic research in that it does not focus on an entire culture group. A living educational theory is an explanation of an individual's educational influence in their own learning and in the learning of others. The researcher is living and working in that culture. In engaging with the cultural influences in the individual's learning, living theorists include an understanding of cultural influences in their explanation of their influences in learning. And I think that's very close to ethnography. So autoethnography then is very much similar to living educational theory. And so because it does study the self. It is a study of self within a culture. When you're doing autoethnographic or living educational theory, again, it's the same question. It's the question of, am I living my values fully in my practice? And how do I know? How am I improving my practice in this classroom, in the teaching of these students in mathematics? And am I living according to my values, or am I a living contradiction? And again, always, how do I know? And again, back to the validation group. This group is essential to helping us make sure that when we make claims to know, that we have substantiated those claims with adequate data. And one of the things about action research and living educational theory is that we need to be rigorous in assuring that we have the data to support our claims to know. So, Chandra, I'm not sure that I fully answered your question.
Yeah. Somehow I got the answers, madam. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Jackie. It was great time to you be here in our class. I hope I'll be sharing more with you, and I'll be sharing this video with you as well. And
Thank you.
if my students they have anything to ask with you, I'll be forwarding.
I just like to say that I'm happy to send you notes on anything we've talked about today so that you can see it visually. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, that would be helpful. I'll be sharing with them.
Okay, I'll send you right away anything that I've talked about today, I think. The rest will be on the recording. I would be happy to follow up on any of these questions with a bit more time.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great to see you.
That's great to see you as well.
Thank you. See you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.